Welcome everybody for another episode. This time we have with us on Readers Co the lovely Claire Messud with her latest book, This Strange Eventful History, that was longlisted for the Booker Prize 2024. So welcome with us.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you.
We just discussed a whole panel discussion about your book and all, but I would love if you could tell us more about This Strange Eventful History and what it's about in a general way and what can we expect.
Okay, so it's a novel that's inspired by or based on, but isn't literally my family history. My father's family were colonial people in Algeria, French and Spanish and Italian and Maltese. So a mix of things, but effectively colonials. And the novel starts in 1940 and it ends in 2010. And it has 7 sections, one each decade, 1940, 1952 or 3, 1962, 1974, right, and so on. And it has 3 generations of the family. So there's a couple, Gaston and Lucienne, who were born at around 1900, and then their children who were born in the early 30s, Francois and Denise, and then Francois marries a Canadian woman named Barbara. And they have 2 children who are called Chloe and Lulu.
So it's like it's a family story inspired by your family history, sort of. So where did you get the material for it? Because it's still fiction, but there is some historical material to it. Right?
Yes, absolutely. So it follows. I mean, it happens in a lot of travel. I think there are 5 different. Certainly there are 5 different points of view, and I think 5 different continents almost, maybe only 4, but lots of people move around a lot, and that was sort of based on where my family moved around too. But my grandfather had written a sort of a family history just about the years 1928 when he and my grandmother married to 1946 when the Second World War ended. So I read that, and that gave me some material, which is in the very early part of the book. But then I was also reading history books and reading family letters, some of which we still have, and lots of history books, and watching films and newsreels and all sorts of different things to try to get a sense of what the world was like,
and sort of like weave a story from that.
Yes.
It's very interesting that you have material from like your history, like a specific like family history. How do you go on archiving that in your family? Like, do you like keep boxes of like letters from all the way back? Why and how do you do that?
So, funnily enough, I guess, I mean, one of the things that I sometimes feel sad about is that people don't write letters anymore, because it was such a wonderful personal thing,
to keep them also.
And you could keep them. And so I was aware of openings of my parents kept letters. So for example, my father went to study in the United States in the early 1950s. And I don't have any of the letters he sent to his family, but I have all the letters that they sent to him, which he saved. So from this year that he was studying in Amherst, Massachusetts, I have the letters that his sister wrote and his parents wrote to him. And that, reading those, one thing I felt the strangeness that probably the last time somebody took them out of the envelope was when he received the letter, in 1953. Then he put it back in the envelope and eventually put it in a box.
Yeah.
And so, but then it's as alive, you read it and it's like somebody's speaking in your ear and they're right there.
From all the way back. It's like a time capsule, which is very interesting. I know that like books hold a lot of history, your history included, which is in this book. So how important is it for people to read? Like to really, especially like in this time, I feel like a lot of youngsters don't read that much. So why is it so important to read?
Oh, don't get me started. I have so many reasons why it's important to read. One is because, there's a wonderful, I forget which famous writer said, if you don't read, you lead one life. But if you read books, you lead thousands of lives, because you can suddenly be, I don't know, in 1820 in Japan, or you can be, walking alongside somebody.
Change places.
Yeah, change gender, change nation, change generation. So there's that. But I also think this is more on the. I think there's something very special when you read a book. So when you see a movie, it's a wonderful thing, but somebody has made the pictures for you. And when you read a book, you imagine and you create it. And so everybody, each reader, their version of the book is their own. It's their own.
Exactly.
And that's why when you've read the book and then you see the movie, you're always disappointed because it doesn't look the way it's supposed
You're like, this is not how I imagined it.
Right. And the way I imagined it is the right way because it's for me. So I think, but I also think that's a sort of training for the mind, you know, and it means that reading is actually a creative activity, and so if you don't have that experience, it's a sort of great pleasure that you don't have, but it also makes a whole store of memories that are imaginary memories, because they're the books that you've lived through. So I think it's, you know, I think it's a very special. Also, this is like, you know, I know we're all talking about AI and but how cool is it that there can be squiggles on paper that make an idea go from your head into my head,
into your head,
across centuries, across, you know, across cultures,
and this is why I find older books most fascinating, because I'm like, maybe someone in the modern time can translate an idea for me, but like, imagine how classics through decades can like bring you a story, and it's so vivid in my head. Sometimes I see the pictures and I'm like, this is amazing. I can see this guy. Like, for example, I love Sherlock Holmes, for example, and I can see the man investigating and looking at the body and seeing the details, and I'm like, this has been written like ages ago. Right?
Like 130,
something,
50,
exactly.
whatever, yes.
And it's just so wonderful and so amazing, right?
It's incredible.
So I also know that you teach creative writing, which is someday I hope I can have some sort of like creative writing classes. I'm looking forward to it. I don't know when, but sometime. So how is it important? How important is it that writers are readers first?
Well, you know, it's interesting because you were saying youngsters don't necessarily want to read. So I teach now a number of people. I teach people who are huge readers and have been readers all their lives. And sometimes I'm teaching people who want to be writers, but they don't really read.
They don't read.
And I always say, no, you have to read. And they say, why? And I say, well, because so much is about what makes a story work is something that you learn by reading. You can't teach it in a classroom like 1, 2, 3, like do this, do this, do this, and it will work. No, the way that you learn how to write is sometimes from what's working and sometimes from what's not working. When you read something and it doesn't interest you and you think, I'm finding this boring, then you ask yourself, well, why is it boring? Well, because this description is too long, or because there isn't enough dialogue, or because, you know, or because it's whatever it is. But I think, you know, reading is how you discover what's effective for you as a person, and what doesn't work, and then how to incorporate those things into your own writing.
Interesting. I had a discussion once with a friend, and he said, reading is to writing what observation is to a painter, sort of. So like, if you can't observe all these things in life, how are you going to paint them? If you only see a black canvas, you're only gonna put back like so little. But the thing is to inspire yourself, sort of, and have materials to like to be able to work with. Exactly.
Yes, and as diverse an array as possible. So not just one kind of material, as you're saying, but like
as diverse as it can be.
As many different things as you. I mean, I try to explain to my students like food. If you eat only hamburgers, right? You're going to be made of hamburgers.
Exactly.
Right? So you want to eat a variety of things.
Your mind want to have as much as your body. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Sarah. Do you remember the very first book or author, at least, that you've read when you were young, or at least some of them?
So I remember a whole bunch of children's books that I really loved.
Amazing. Tell us about it.
But I also, what I was going to say, I remember, and maybe, you know, they say that when you take out a memory, you rewrite it. So maybe it's made up. But I remember the first time I realized I could read. Reading, it was a book about Father MacDonald and his apples. And I had been obviously, my mother had been reading it to me or whatever, and I suddenly realized I could sound out
The
the
words.
words. And I was by myself on my bed in my room,
That is wonderful.
and I was so excited. I just thought, like, because it's the world opening up, right? Suddenly.
Uh-huh.
But I loved. There are so many children's books that I loved, and I read a lot of British children because I was a child in Australia, so I read a lot of English
Yeah.
children's books.
Okay.
Some of them Victorian. Like there's a writer called E. Nesbitt who wrote books like The Railway Children.
Okay.
Have you heard of The Railway Children? It's,
No.
always in those old. It's about there's a group of kids, siblings, and the parents are nowhere. Like I feel like that something's happened and the children have to
Okay.
kind of take care of themselves. But those books, and then there's of Anne of Green Gables.
Yes.
Like Anne of
Yes.
Green Gables.
Anne of Green Gables.
Yeah,
Yes.
was a big favorite for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean
That's
that was
cool.
maybe my Canadian mother.
That's so
the things
cool.
that she gave me. But I also so many things. Did you have particular books that you loved?
I remember it was The Misfortunes of Sophie.
Yes.
I also remember that when I was young, I used to read a lot from Agatha Christie, which I didn't like. And so I've read a book or two of hers, and then I discover Sherlock Holmes. And this is where I shift completely in detective stories. And I'm like, forget about. And I know a lot of people love Agatha Christie. It's just that it's not really my thing. I prefer Sherlock. And that was like a decisive moment for me. And I was young. I used to write like abridged versions.
Oh, I love it.
And so as I get older now, I try to go back to the classics that I read when I was young and just like dig into them. The Little Prince as well.
I love The Little Prince.
I've read it in French and then I've read it in English just to see how the translation feels. And we also have stories of the prophets in Muslim culture. So you have like these little, like very small booklets that are like maybe 30, 40 pages barely that are made for kids. And it kind of teaches you about different prophets and their stories. And it's in a narrative way, very narrative, very interesting. It skims through the big details of their life, like the big events. So you kind of have an idea about your history, like as a Muslim, but also it gives you like material to like think about. So we have like the story of Jesus, for example, the story of Adam, the story of Muhammad, Prophet ﷺ, and all of these little stories. And I used to read French classics a lot. Jules Verne, Victor Hugo, which I absolutely hate. And I think also I kind of hate books like that because I was so young and the books were like so massive, especially like Victor Hugo. I didn't get the abridged version. I took the full text and I was like, this is bad. Jules Verne was one of my favorites because it was adventures.
Yes, adventures.
Full of adventures.
For me, Dickens was like Victor Hugo. Like again, like
the equivalent.
It was they were too big, and I'd start and it would seem very laborious. Did you ever read? I don't know that anybody would read it in French translation, but a book that everybody I've ever given it to loves, and that I read when I was about like 12 or 13. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier.
Never heard of.
No, there's also a movie.
Okay.
But read it first.
Yes.
but it's one of those things that's also completely consuming, and it's sort of like I guess you'd call it gothic a little bit. It's about about a young woman who marries. She comes from a humble background, and she marries a guy who's aristocratic, British, and his first wife has died. But when she goes to the house and moves in, it's like the ghost of the first wife is everywhere.
Oh.
So Rebecca is the name of the dead first wife who's haunting. Who's sort
Rebecca
of
is the first wife.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So
I'll read it.
It's quite spooky and very, very.
Well, it's the time for it. Fall is the season for spookiness. That's amazing. Speaking of books, what are the kind of books that you read nowadays? Since you write historical fiction, do you only stick to that, or do you go for other things?
I'm like, how the I feel like we have two dogs and they'll eat almost anything. I'm in reading. I'll read almost anything. I love many different sorts of things, and I love nonfiction. I love I love essays. I love novels. I love short stories. I probably love novels best, but I love all different kinds of novels.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. Do you mention any sort of like books or letters or writings in the book in this strange eventful history?
I think I do, but
Okay.
I mean,
You can't seem to remember.
but I'm not sure exactly what ones. But I think
Okay.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I know that in the beginning, it mentions like a letter being written that like Paris has fallen and all of that, and that's quite interesting because also the material you source the book from is letters and like writings and your grandfather's journal. So that's really interesting, like parallel to see that it's also the same elements that we see back again
Yes. Yes.
in the
Well,
book.
that letter is actually in my grandfather stuck that letter in,
okay.
and that's a letter that my father, who was a little boy,
Wrote.
he wrote.
Oh,
So
wow.
in his childish handwriting.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's
So
wonderful.
That one's real.
How does your family feel about the book?
So the
Just
only
it's family
person is
history.
my sister, because my parents are not living and my grandparents are not
Right,
living.
mom.
And my sister, I think, was happy. She said, "Oh,
Yeah.
you wrote it down." So
That's
yeah.
amazing. What about your children? How do they feel about it?
So my daughter read it. You'd have to ask her when I'm not in the room, because she told me she loved it. But
Okay, I'll be in contact with her, so at least I can get an idea. Well, I'm not going to keep you more because I know a lot of people are waiting for you back in the room for the discussion. So I would like to thank you for this small exchange.
Thank you.
And I cannot wait to finish it. I barely started it, as I told you, because I only got my hands on it today. But I can't wait to finish it. And I want to thank you so much. I hope your visit in Algeria is going to be very fruitful.
It's fantastic. I'm so thrilled to be here and so grateful.
That's
Thank
amazing.
you for our wonderful
You're
conversation.
most welcome. And I'll guess I'll have to get back to you guys on this book specifically, and I'll tell you my opinion about it once I'm done. So that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'll catch you guys in another episode. Ciao.